OnePlus has been known as the flagship killer because it offers the same sort of specs as its competitors but at a cheaper rate. And that's why I've been a customer since 2016 with the OnePlus 3. Then I moved to the 5, then the 7 Pro, then the 10 Pro, and now I'm going to show you guys the OnePlus 13. So I'm going to start with what I think is good about the phone, starting with the screen. So some stats for you: it has a 1600 nit rating and it goes all the way up to 4500 nits of peak brightness. So what does this mean? It means when you're outside in direct sunlight, you'll still be able to see your screen. Now, I don't think this is a massive deal because phones over the last few years have been absolutely fine with how bright they are. My OnePlus 10, for instance, has been absolutely fine, no problems whatsoever. And side by side with the 13, you won't really notice a difference. But that being said, on paper, it is one of the better screens on the market. It also has a 2K resolution, which means it's absolutely stunning. But out the box, it is set to 1080p. But for me personally, I mostly use content in 1080p and it saves on battery life. So I just keep it how the settings were out the box. But if you wanted to, you can scale that right up and get the absolute most out of the screen at over 2K resolution. It also has an adaptive refresh rate, which means it can go all the way down to 1 Hz if you're looking at a still image, and then all the way up to 120 Hz if you're gaming and want the absolute max frames per second out of that game. And of course, with it being adaptive, it means it can save on battery. So if you're using an application or looking, like I said, at a still image, it doesn't need to have a super high refresh rate. So it scales it down and saves you battery. Next, we have to talk about the battery. The battery is incredible. It is a 6000 mAh battery. Well, technically it's actually two 3000 mAh batteries, and that's what allows OnePlus to have super fast charging, which is super fast. And also now with the difference in the battery they're using with a silicon-based battery and also with the new chipset that optimizes battery saving and just battery usage in general, it lasts a really good time. So I've got some examples which I'll show on screen right now, which shows that I got a screen on time of nearly 6.5 hours with my last charge being nearly 24 hours ago, and I still have 18% battery left. Now some people might say, yeah, that's decent. It's not amazing, but it is definitely some good battery life. But when you actually check the graph, I didn't charge it to 100%. I charged it to 80%. So if you add an additional 20% on there, I actually have 38% battery left technically, and I can go for a lot longer. Almost potentially 10 hours of screen on time with over 24 hours since my last charge. Now, of course, there are so many differences in settings, what apps you use, how you use your phone, but in general, the battery life is really good and the fast charging is incredible. I will talk about the fact you don't get a charging brick if you're from the UK, and I've had to use my old one, which is 80 watts instead of the 100 watts that this is capable of, but the 80 watts does charge it absolutely fine, super fast. The only thing I will say, if anyone is watching this and is looking to get a charging brick because they're from the UK and want to get the 13, unfortunately you do need to get a OnePlus charging brick. Otherwise, you won't get the full capabilities of that full fast charge, which is annoying, and it's a shame that these companies are doing this, but I'll talk about that more at the end. Everyone knows that OnePlus doesn't have the best cameras, and that's always been the case. I should know, I've been with them for 9 years. However, I'm happy to say they are catching up. I won't say this is the best camera on the market, but it is still very good, and for 90% of users it'll be absolutely fine. I've got some examples on screen now of some macro shots, also some shots I took when I was on holiday, some low light shots, also some shots with different lighting from LEDs, from street lamps, how it deals with that, and also the aspect of the night sky. Mixed in with all of this, quite difficult shots that most cameras, especially phone cameras, I think will have trouble with. But the OnePlus, especially in multiple different scenarios, has exceeded my expectations. I mean, very, very good. Like with some of the nighttime shots, you can see that it has the LEDs that light up just fine. They look good. You also have a street lamp that also is exactly how it should be. It's not overexposed. It doesn't have too much contrast. It literally is how I saw it. And then if you look at the night sky, that is also not overexposed, or it's not a different color or just some weird stuff happening. That is how it was. It picks all these different lights, all these different textures perfectly for this nighttime shot. The macro lens also does a fairly good shot. However, it isn't super macro. It's more of just the 3x telescope camera just refigured to be a little bit more macro. So it's not super close, but it is one of the best macro cameras we've had, I think, on the OnePlus. So that's a pro. And also just in general with daytime shots, if you're taking a shot that is well lit, it's going to look good. Very few times I found it struggling. What I will talk about, especially as a pro and a con, is the zoom in. So with the 120 times zoom in, which is digital, you can get an okay shot super far away. But that is only because it has an AI enhancer that then retextures the image to make it visible, basically, because at 120 times optical zoomed in or digitally zoomed in, yeah, it doesn't look good. But sometimes the AI enhancer does a very good job where it does actually look fairly natural and what you expect it to be zoomed in. Other times, it just looks so bad. It looks so fake. It looks just terrible. But that's what you kind of expect, I guess, with an AI image enhancer. When looking for my next phone, there are some categories it needs to have. Number one is battery life. It needs to have a good battery life. It needs to have decent cameras and also a good screen. But also, there's some smaller things that I also really like about the OnePlus, which is like the alert slider. Really handy. I use it all the time, and it's actually a selling point to why I wanted to buy this phone over others, because if I go into a meeting or if I need to have it on silent and I've just forgotten to do that, especially if it's like late at night, I don't want to rummage around through the settings to try and turn that on. I can just feel on the side, pull that down, done. And my last little pro is the IP rating. It's got an IP rating of 69, which means it can withstand pressurized water at higher temperatures, which means you can put this in a dishwasher and it should be safe. Now, I don't think that's needed. OnePluses, especially older OnePluses, some of them didn't have any IP rating at all because it costs money to get an IP rating. So it's not necessarily a deal breaker for me, it having one or not having one, but knowing that it can withstand pressurized water does reassure me that if I go outside and it does get a little bit wet, it'll be absolutely fine because it can withstand a lot more. Now let's move on to what I don't like so much about this phone. Starting with the cameras, I know I mentioned them as a pro, and that's because year on year they have been getting better, and like I mentioned, in some scenarios they are phenomenal and actually better than other phones on the market, I personally think. But it's not perfect. Now, some things I want to talk about with the camera. Number one is the AI. So there is a bunch of different AI features with the camera, or with photos, I should say, and they just don't work. Okay, so with the enhancer, it enhances it a little bit, but I wouldn't say necessarily makes a massive difference to most photos. You also have the reflection remove tool, which once again, doesn't really work. I mean, it might work if the reflection is of a light object and that light object is very minimal, quite dim, then I think it will work. But if it has any sort of reflection of a person or an animal or a plant, it doesn't know what it's doing and it doesn't look good. So in my opinion, it basically right now doesn't work. Talking more specifically about the cameras, I've mentioned the macro camera, which can do decent shots as I showed you. However, it's not quite macro enough for me. I don't necessarily regard that as a macro shot. It's more of just a zoomed in shot, which you can achieve without a macro setting. But it's nitpicking, but it's one of those where it's not quite a macro setting. And the biggest Achilles heel for the OnePlus, especially with cameras, is video. It's decent. It will do a decent job. There's some shots I've taken for this video that has been recorded on a OnePlus device, but it takes the perfect light, the perfect scenario, the perfect settings to get a decent result. Where if you compare it to like an iPhone, the video on an iPhone is very good, or even a Samsung or a Pixel. They know what they're doing. You can literally just whack open the app, take a video, and it will be decent. With the OnePlus, that is the case. There's just sometimes a little bit more thought that needs to go into it. My next con is to do with live alerts, or dynamic island. Sorry, just a tickle in the back of the throat there. But yes, live alerts, which does look very, very similar to dynamic island, but completely different. It is a worse version of that, where the only music app that works with live alerts is Spotify, which obviously very, very popular, but I personally use YouTube Music and it doesn't work. And also, there's not really a lot that really works with the live alerts. So this will hopefully change in the future, where you might be able to track a food order or a delivery, and things like that might appear, which will be very helpful. But right now, you can do like a timer, Spotify. That's pretty much it. Oh, also when you have your alert slider, when you move that, it does tell you what it's moved to or what setting it's on. But yeah, it's kind of pointless and useless. OnePlus have their own operating system, which is called Color OS in some countries and Oxygen OS in others like mine. It's one of my favorite operating systems because it's basically stock Android. And what that means is super minimal. It doesn't have hard baked in apps which you can't get rid of. That's not the case now. Unfortunately, there is a bunch of different apps now you can't remove in the OnePlus 13. One of them being the Internet app. Now, I first thought this wouldn't be a problem because it has an ad blocker built in to the browser, which could be very, very useful. A little bit like Brave, if you know what that browser is. I tested it though, and it's not a good browser. It is much slower than its competitors. The ad blocker basically doesn't work. There's a few different websites you can test the ad blocking ability, and out of 100 ads, I think it blocked 2. Now with Brave, as a comparison, that also has a baked-in ad blocker to the browser, that blocked I think 98 or 99 out of 100 ads. So Brave is far, far superior and much better, and it's annoying because I'm not going to use that internet app because it's not good and I can't get rid of it. So we've talked about what's good, we've talked about what's bad, now let's talk about what's ugly. And I don't mean the phone, I actually really like the look of the phone, but it's not the best looking OnePlus 13. I personally prefer the OnePlus 13R because it has a flat screen and just looks a little bit better in my opinion. Now, I do know every other manufacturer is doing the same thing, a flat screen with metal bezels with these little curvatures on the edges, and I think that looks good though. It does look very samey with Samsung doing it, Pixel doing it, iPhone doing it, but I do think it looks good. And it's a bit of a shame that the flagship, the 13, in my opinion, doesn't look as good as the mid-range 13R. And unfortunately, that's not where we're going to end it, because this is the OnePlus 13 box that you get the phone in, and this is the 10 Pro. Yeah, you can see where your value is going. OnePlus was so good for value. Not only would it be cheaper than its competitors, but with the same spec and literally be a flagship killer, you would also in the box get a charging brick, a cable, and even a case for your phone, which would just be amazing. Now you get a cable, and that's it. And also the price has gone up. And also if you wanted to get a charging brick, which you need the OnePlus one, that costs quite a bit of money. And then if you needed a case as well, you're talking about like £100 extra. And the phone's already gone up each year by like £100. So whereas competitors like the Pixel being around about £1,000 and people going, wow, £1,000 for a phone is so much money. Now this is $899, and if you're spending £100 to get a brick because you need one and also a case, is £1,000. Now, obviously, I still think the value is here with OnePlus because even though it has gone up in value and you're getting less, competitors have also put up their prices. And it just seems insane now that you have to spend over £1,000 to get a decent phone. It's just crazy. But OnePlus, for me, I got the early bird discount and also I traded in my old device, so I got another discount. So it does make it more affordable. But like I mentioned in general, years ago, it was almost half the price of its competitors. Now, it's about £100 difference and you don't get the same sort of value in the box either. A little bit disappointing, it is what it is. The other thing I want to talk about, and this is definitely more personal to me, I just am a little bit disappointed in OnePlus for what they did, was because I was an early bird, discount E, if you will, I went for the standard edition. If you don't know, there was basically an announcement you could be an early bird where you put a £50 deposit down and you have two options, standard or enhanced. Now, my thought was enhanced is usually more storage. I don't need that. It usually is about £100 more. I don't want to necessarily pay £100 more for something I don't need, so I'm not going to go for it. I'm just going to go for the standard. And on release day, they had the standard, which was 256 gigabytes of storage, for the same price as the enhanced, which was like 512 gigabytes. Which is really good for the people wanting the best value getting the enhanced, but it kind of sucks for everyone who had the early bird and went for the standard because you're basically paying the same price for less. It's not the end of the world because I got the phone I wanted, and it is also, like I mentioned, still a decent price. It's just a little bit disappointing in OnePlus that they sort of fucked over the standard edition people and rewarded the enhanced. It is what it is. So my conclusion is it is still a fantastic phone, and that's why I bought it, because I have done my research against Pixels, iPhones, Samsungs, and just the value and what you get still from a OnePlus is just better than all those other competitors in my opinion. And I am super happy with this phone, especially around battery life. Battery life is a big thing for me where I don't want to worry like, oh, I need to charge it, I need to find a charger, or I have to wait till charging it. I've never really had that with a OnePlus because of the fast charging, but now with the battery life you get with this is literally once every 2 days, and I feel like I could push it, but I want to use my phone as much as I want to use my phone, and I have no worries. When it gets down to 40%, with older phones, I'll go 40%, need to charge that. With this, I'll go, I'll charge in the morning, if I have to. And then when I charge it, I only charge it to 80% because that's better for battery life. And also, that's all I need. I don't need 100% battery. I only do that if I'm going on a long trip and I might be away for a day or even longer. That's when I'll do that. Otherwise, yeah, 80% does me absolutely fine. So super happy with the cameras, super happy with the battery, the screen is beautiful, and the chip is just insane. So that's the review. Hopefully you liked it. This is the case I purchased off Amazon because you need a case now. If you guys are interested in this case and like the look of it, I'll leave a link down below. But yeah, that's the review. Super happy with it. If you guys like this video, please like and share. Leave a little comment as well because I'm trying to improve continuously. What would you like to see in the future? What would you like to see differently about these reviews? Let me know in the comments and I'll see you guys next time.